Top Warriors assistant Kenny Atkinson moving on to Cleveland. Big Kevon Looney, meanwhile, sticking around for another year, and the NBA draft just a couple days away. We've got analysis right now on Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right. $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Go ahead and visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Thanks so much for being here. I'm your host, Kylan Mills, a play-by-play broadcaster and host for the Big Ten Network, NBC Sports Bay Area, and several other outlets. A lot of topics to cover because we've got news on this Monday in the land of the Golden State Warriors. First, top assistant Kenny Atkinson moving on. We'll talk about who some of the options are to replace him on Steve Kerr's staff. Plus, some moves in terms of bringing someone back, and that's big Kevon Looney is going to be around for another year based on what all the reports are right now. And then finally, NBA draft analysis. I have got another expert who has been covering college basketball all throughout the season and brings incredible insight now on the show. Let's start with the news of Kenny Atkinson officially being hired as the head coach over in Cleveland. The Cavaliers made that news official today after it had been discussed and reported for a while that he was one of the finalists, and they have zeroed in on him. Now, I'm being told that everyone in the Warriors organization is super happy for Atkinson, that he's a top-notch guy, good person. You saw what he did with the Brooklyn Nets organization before coming over to Golden State. Everyone happy to see him have success and earn that head coaching role once again. Now, who could replace him on Steve Kerr's staff? That's the big question mark. A lot of folks still feel like they have never been able to replicate what Mike Brown did on the staff just a couple years ago before he got hired as a head coach with the Sacramento Kings. So a little bit of deja vu. Yes, it's a good thing if you've got talented staff members, but it's not good when you do have turnover year after year with the number of coaches moving on. You want to have some level of consistency. So let's say the Warriors do look within the organization. Who are the other top assistants who've been around for a while? Well, first, you've got Ron Adams, who is one of the most experienced assistant coaches in the NBA. 47 years as a coach, has been with the Warriors for the last decade. Reportedly, or at least initially, was focusing on defense and reportedly switched over, did not want to take on that role in 2019 because he didn't want to have to travel as much, wanted to switch over to doing more player development, being involved more in relationship building, scouting, and at the bottom line was travel less. He didn't want to have to go to every single Warriors game. Someone who's older in age just felt like they didn't want to have to deal with that travel grind that goes along with 82 games, with half of them being on the road, a lot of rigors that come with that. So to me, Ron Adams, one of the best assistants out there, but not likely someone who's going to want to take on that top assistant or number two role because of what would be required. You have to travel to the away games. That leaves Bruce Frazier, the next in line. Been with the Warriors since 2014, came along with Steve Kerr, one of his close confidants, also went to Arizona. As a player development coach, has worked primarily with some individual players, but has become known as Steph Curry's lead coach, main shooting coach, works one-on-one with Steph Curry extensively, but very close with Steve Kerr. He could be a very realistic option to slide up into that number two role and a key role in this Warriors coaching staff. Another assistant coach to mention is Chris DeMarco, who has climbed up the ladder steadily since joining this organization back in 2012, 2013 as a video intern, was promoted to assistant video coordinator, climbed the ranks, became a scout and video scout, ended up being named a player development role, and then moving up to an assistant coach. He's someone who's been around the organization for a while, does have relationships with the current players, and is someone that this organization could look to elevate, whether it be to a higher role among the assistant coaching staff or up to that number two role would be a pretty big jump. But again, if the Warriors are looking to pick from within, those are some of the options. Some others that maybe they could look to bring back. Jama Momalalela, is a guy who everyone in this organization loved when he came over. His first season, the Warriors won the 2022 World Championship. did end up going back to the Raptors. That's where he had been prior to coming over to the Golden State Warriors, but is someone that is well known and loved throughout the organization. Another name that comes up who's previously with Golden State, actually started out as a player with Golden State, is Aaron Miles. Is that someone the Warriors could look to bring back? We'll continue to dive into some of the different options and who the Warriors could possibly bring in as a top assistant. If you have any individuals that you would like to see the Warriors bring in, please drop them in the comments. We will do some further digging and analysis on that tomorrow. I've got some guests coming up this week, including Kevin Dana, who is well plugged in as the voice of the Santa Cruz Warriors to the organization. I'm very curious to get some of his thoughts on what could happen with that top assistant coaching role now open within the Warriors. Okay, moving along to another key off-season move that we just learned about on this Monday, and that's Kevon Looney will be back. The Warriors have concluded they'll keep him around for $8 million. That's his next year's salary. So he will be around for one more season. Kevon Looney, one of the best rebounders on this team during the last several years, has evolved since he was drafted by the Golden State Warriors. However, seems to have lost a step since the 2022 title run. Looney definitely looks slower. Has never been a great defender, lost some quickness, I think, since his UCLA days due to having hip surgery. Did undergo a surgery the day that he was drafted, in fact. But you look at some of his highlights from UCLA and you kind of say, what happened? And I think he's even further lost a step these last two seasons. There was just something that made him look a little bit slower defensively. And I do think that's a big issue because bigs in the NBA are getting quicker and they're getting better on the perimeter. Kevon Looney is not someone who can guard in the perimeter. He doesn't have a quick lateral step. He's not a great 1v1 defender once you get him outside of the basket, of right underneath the basket. And with the way bigs are developing and the way that the NBA is looking to go with more versatile bigs, quicker bigs, more athletic bigs, Kevon Looney is none of those things, despite being a great rebounder. I think he's a great person, a great locker room piece, a great veteran presence, which is something that has also come across in reports that the Warriors wanted to keep him around for some of that and what he brings off the court. I'm happy to see him stay. It's not a big price tag, but at the same time, you're starting to look at a lot of the Warriors roster last season coming back. Gary Payton II picking up his player option. We'll see what happens with Klay Thompson. But if you're looking at the Warriors bringing back all of these players from last year, listen, this organization cannot run it back. You can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. So while I don't have a huge issue with Kevon Looney coming back, I think he's a good player to bring in off the bench, to have as an option, to have as a rebounder, maybe a second center. But now you've also got Trayce Jackson-Davis. So that's where I have more of an issue because I see Trayce Jackson-Davis as being that excellent second option at the center position. And I want to see them bring in a new starter at the 5. Draymond Green, too undersized to me to shoulder that load throughout the entire NBA season. I think in certain situations it works. In certain situations, you can go small. You go back to the semifinal, Western Conference semifinal series against the Los Angeles Lakers one season ago, where you saw, I thought Draymond Green be very effective against Anthony Davis because he was pulling him out from underneath the basket. Draymond Green is an elite defender. He was getting involved in the high pick and rolls with Steph Curry, and that forced Davis out from under the basket, cleared out some space where Davis had been dominating the boards, blocking shots, also been able to dominate on the offensive end. Draymond Green was able to shut some of that down defensively because of what an elite defender he is. But I just don't think realistically he is a starting center in this league right now over the course of 82 games. I like Trayce Jackson-Davis. I don't know that he's ready for a full-time starter role. I think that he's better and a great option coming in his second year as being a key piece regularly in the rotation, but coming in off the bench. And that's where do you find a spot for Kevon Looney then? That's where I get a little bit lost because Trayce Jackson-Davis clearly has a higher upside and to me is better right now at the 5. While Loon has done a lot of great things with this organization, Trayce Jackson-Davis is the future. So I don't know how you break up those minutes if, like I said, which my want is you bring in another elite big who's going to be in the starting role. We'll just have to see how things shake out. Maybe Trayce Jackson-Davis is the starter. I just think when you look at trying to be a contending team, I don't know if Jackson-Davis is ready for that type of role. Look at the teams that just won. You don't have second-year players starting at the 5. Look at the players or the teams that were just battling in the NBA finals or even in their conference finals. those rosters have experienced players. They have some of those middle ground players. Yes, you can have one or two young pieces, but like a rookie or a second year player, realistically, I think that's a lot to ask. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and to come away with huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, I'm excited to be joined now here on Locked On Warriors by Rocco Miller, college basketball analyst, bracketologist for a number of different outlets. Rocco, thanks so much for spending some time chatting all things NBA draft. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Kylan. Thanks for having me on. Can't wait. I can't believe we're right around the corner from draft day after all this waiting for the Warriors.
I know, it's crazy. And the offseason has been so long for Warriors fans. It's been painful, but something to get excited about. Even though the Warriors don't have a first round pick, you can still get a quality player in the second round. You look at the big Trace Jackson Davis out of Indiana, a 57th overall pick a year ago. I really like how his game translated to the NBA. I love him. I want the Warriors to keep him as they look to make major roster changes. We'll just have to see what happens. But just to give people listening or watching some hope, there is still the possibility of bringing in a quality player with the 52nd overall pick. Now, you've watched and followed college basketball very closely all throughout the last year. Going back to the 2023 draft, or should I say the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes, there was a lot of talk that this year's draft class just wouldn't be quite as good or quite as exciting. From what you've seen in college basketball, would you say that's the case, or do you think that there could still be some really good players to come into the NBA this year?
Yeah, I can understand the take, I guess, to a degree, because we're at an interesting point in college basketball's life cycle with the NIL era in full force and with the wide open transfer portal in full force. Now, for a few years, it's becoming so common and popular for players to make enough and be able to earn enough to stay in college. So unless you're a guaranteed lottery pick or you have some really, really strong advice that you'll be a first rounder, you're seeing so many guys just stick around, get a couple million to play in college, like upwards of a couple million, I should say. And that's really changed the game. But I think what the NBA is getting in return is a much more polished, more mature player, especially here in like when you're looking at second round prospects. So with the Warriors only having the number 52 overall, which is scheduled for Thursday night, and assuming they don't make any blockbuster trades where they end up, acquiring a first round pick, I think they will be able to select from a handful of quality players, even at that 52nd position. The way that college basketball is structured right now with the power, it's been the Power Six, it's going to be the Power Five next year, is you still have some exceptional players and older players across all these rosters. So I'm looking at the big board right now with upwards of 100 guys, whether you look at the Athletic or whatever your resource of choice is for preparing for the draft. And you're just seeing just all these big names like a Jaden Ledee from San Diego State, who might not even get drafted. He was the best player last year in the Mountain West Conference, a league that sent 6 teams to the NCAA tournament. The depth and the quality, like an Anton Watson from Gonzaga, he's on the borderline of being drafted. So, Kylan, just overall, I think the NBA, maybe you're not getting the flashy, shiny lottery picks and 18-year-olds as mass quantity as you used to. But we are getting way more depth, and I think that's good news this year for Golden State.
It's such an interesting juxtaposition in college sports because in the past, you were really seeing the one and done, to me, rise during a certain point of college basketball where it was almost better for players to go into the draft just based on potential, and playing another year in college could potentially hurt them if, depending on how things panned out. Now, like you said, with the NIL money in the mix, there's much more incentives to stick around. And personally, as a college basketball fan, I enjoy that because I like seeing the storylines. I like seeing players and following a team where you've got the same consistent guys over the course of 3-4 years. And then you are bringing in a more polished product into the NBA. And I do think it pays off. Yes, I understand some of those high picks that don't need to play for 3 or 4 years, but in general, it's been enjoyable to watch a little bit of that shift. And I do, like I said, just as a fan, hope that that continues. I like seeing some of the older players coming into the NBA draft. Now I want to get into a couple of specific individuals because on this Monday, we're just a couple days away from the first round and the second round of the draft. And some new mock draft projections have been coming out from a number of websites. I'm going to throw some names at you. We won't go too rapid fire, but just kind of go down the list here. Yahoo Sports released a new mock draft, and their projection is for the Warriors to take former UConn guard Cam Spencer. For those who are unfamiliar, if you didn't watch the Final Four, get with it. Most people probably have seen a little bit of him play, at least 6'4", 205. What I heard is that his numbers and what came out of the combine wasn't great. He got a little bit lost, but from what I saw at the collegiate level, you love to see someone who can knock down shots at a high octane from beyond the arc, more than 43% on triples in 4 of his 5 collegiate seasons. When you watch him play, though, what are some of the strengths? What are some of the weaknesses? And what do you think could translate to the NBA?
Yeah, for Cam, I mean, if the name's familiar, Warriors fans, his brother Pat was on a 2-way contract for Golden State this past year. So you got that brotherly tie, and maybe that's why they didn't feel the need to work him out. He's not on the Warriors workout list for the pre-draft process. But the things I love about him, I mean, obviously he just won a championship. He's a winner. He played every single game of the last 3 years, never missed a game. So he's incredibly fit, healthy, takes care of himself. Obviously, his brother Pat had a long lacrosse career before finally coming over to the basketball side. So it's just a really, really gifted, athletic family, very competitive, a high spirit, and just a great team guy. So I think he's not somebody that's going to hurt you in any means having him around the clubhouse. Now, obviously, in the NBA, you have such limited roster space. And I think the concerns and the weaknesses with Cam are, is he rangy enough to defend? He's only got a 6'5" wingspan. Does he have the athleticism to keep up with just basically how incredibly athletic the rest of the league is? So those have been some of the concerns. I think that's why you've seen his name slip into the late 30s all the way through to maybe not even being drafted. So really good chance here that Golden State has a chance to pick him at 52.
It's interesting because watching Spencer defend at the collegiate level, he really was pretty disruptive. I liked what I saw from him defensively, was able to get a lot of deflections, a lot of steals, don't have the exact numbers, but still, obviously you're going to start getting more physical play, bigger, longer guys in the NBA. So what you're saying makes sense in terms of just, is the length, is the athleticism going to translate when you bump it up another notch? But he really was good defensively. I still think that he could be at least a solid defender at the NBA. Would you say that's the case?
You would hope so. I think it's hard to say because when you go to the NBA rules and the NBA spacing, it's such a wide open game. So being able to do some of those things in college doesn't always translate in terms of getting into the passing lanes and playing the different mixes of zone defenses you can do in college. And obviously he played in the Big East, where the Big East is incredibly physical. They let a lot of things go, and it can advantage the defense in a lot of different matchups. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case in the NBA, but at the same time, Cam is an incredibly intelligent player. He started in the Patriot League at Loyola, Maryland. You have to have a very high standard of academics to even be able to play in that league. And I think that high IQ and the ability to work hard, plus his physical fitness, he's just one of those people you wouldn't want to count out in any circumstance.
Absolutely. Let's move along to The Athletic. They just released a huge mock draft on this Monday with the 52nd overall pick. They have the Golden State Warriors taking wing Kevin McCullough, 23 years old, out of Kansas. 6'5" is the height. Really put up impressive numbers this past season. Averaged more than 18 points per game, 6 boards, more than 4 assists, 1.5 steals per game. Some good shooting numbers from the field, not great from 3, as I know a lot of Warriors fans are looking for someone who can space the floor. With Klay Thompson's future being uncertain and not having a lot of floor spacers coming off the bench, when you look at some of these draft picks, I am attracted to someone who does have that 3-point shooting ability. But when it comes to McCullough, what kind of player are you getting?
I think you're getting a tenacious defender. So I go back to the 2022 season, out here in San Francisco at the Chase Center, we had the Sweet 16, and Texas Tech was here when McCullough was a member of the Red Raiders. And even though he still had 2 more years of eligibility, he was the best defender, arguably in the country that year. Certainly on the great defensive Texas Tech team that got him to the Sweet 16. Unfortunately for them, they lost a heartbreaker to Duke that night. But McCullough, of course, went on into the portal, played 2 more years for Kansas, carried that forward in terms of being their best defender. And not only that, he really, as you mentioned, Kylan, elevated his offensive game to the point where, he was a really effective passer. He's a top 20 assist guy in terms of assist rate in the Big 12, the nation's best conference in college, where you're playing against a bunch of other pros. He took a lot of the shots for Kansas, a high percentage when he was in there. Obviously battled through some injuries the last 2 years, particularly this last year. But in general, I think the player, and I might sound a little old school here, the player he kind of reminds me of is Bruce Bowen, one of the all-time great defenders in NBA history, just from the standpoint of, you can tell by the way he locks in defensively. And the bigger the moment is, the better he is defensively. And if the Warriors can get ideally back to the promised land, go on another big run in the playoffs down the road, that's the kind of guy you need.
Don't be sad that the NBA season is over. Summer means baseball, the WNBA, and the Olympics are coming up right around the corner. You can bet on all of those sporting events on FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right, $200 you can use to bet on everything from who's going to hit one out of the park to who's going to win the World Series. You can do all of that on FanDuel Sportsbook. A couple of examples of what you could bet on today: which player is going to hit a home run? You could look at Bobby Witt Jr. Bryce Harper is one I would put my money on. Ellie De La Cruz, another good pick. Fernando Tatis Jr., someone you could put your money on. Kyle Schwarber has a big bat. I personally am a big fan of Matt Olson, the former A. He's been outstanding the last couple seasons. So if that player does record a home run, you can win money. You can also look at long-term plays, like who you think is going to win the World Series. Right now, the Los Angeles Dodgers, I know a lot of you Bay Area fans aren't going to be happy to hear that, are the favorites to win the World Series at plus 280. So you can put your money for or against them, depending on where you stand and where you think they'll finish at the end of the MLB season. Either way, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNBA and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, Warriors fans should like to hear about an elite defender possibly coming to the Golden State Warriors. Their perimeter defense has been lacking, to say the least, the last 2 seasons since they won that 2022 championship. So bringing in a young athletic player who can possibly add defensively is something that, well, maybe he's not the best at shooting the 3 ball right now, could still develop that and could still be an attractive addition. Steve Kerr has said the last couple of years, if you play defense, you'll get minutes. I think he would do just fine with the Golden State Warriors. Moving on to another pick, Sports Illustrated has the Golden State Warriors going with Baylor small forward Jaylen Bridges. 6'6.5" or right around 6'7". I'm seeing a couple different things for weight. 215 to 220 seems to be the range. Another older player coming off a redshirt senior season. Some good averages, solid averages. People should like that he's a good rebounder, nearly 6 boards per game, 1.5 assists, more than 1 steal. Another player who can shoot the ball, which the Warriors love. 46.6% shooting from the field, more than 41% from beyond the arc. Potential to be a 3-and-D type of player is what I'm saying, but what is your take on Jaylen Bridges' game?
Oh, there's lots of love about Jaylen Bridges. He played 4 years in the Big 12, 2 at West Virginia and 2 at Baylor. Of course, played at a very high level this past season, gaining all that experience. He was a top 25 player in the country in what our friend Ken Pomeroy calls offensive rating, but that's measured by several different analytic tools. And Jaylen Bridges across the board, pretty much a top 25 efficiency player out of 364 schools, playing in the type of schedule that Baylor plays. That's beyond impressive. And the other thing I really like here is the fit. Everything I've seen or read or heard about potentially what way the Warriors want to go with this pick is they want that 3 position, somebody that fits into the wing, another offensive threat. and a guy who can get after it a little bit defensively. I think Bridges checks all those boxes. And then if you're looking for the clincher, just pull up the list of players that the Warriors have actually worked out, and they did have Bridges come in for a workout.
Yep.
So out of, I think most of the players we're discussing today, he's the one who's checking most of the boxes. So I'm not a professional mock drafter myself, but if I had to take my best guess, he's my guess. But again, you have to remember there's 51 picks before the Warriors even have a chance to pick. And so if somebody else is just as high, he could be long gone as well. So it'd be really interesting to see where he goes.
When you get to this point in the draft, a lot is also going to depend on who's still available and what direction other teams go, which by the time you get to the 50s, it's anybody's guess. So certainly still a lot of guesswork involved in trying to make any predictions, but 3-and-D type of player. Bridges, you pointed out, checking a lot of boxes, also said to be a pretty smart, good off-ball movement. One of the only question marks I've seen with Bridges is the ability to create for himself. Maybe not the best when it comes to perimeter dribbling skills, being able to create his own shot. Is that something that you saw from his game? But I mean, I guess with the Warriors, when you look at replacing, for example, a Klay Thompson type, they do, also have catch and shoot type of players who can thrive in this system, but just something to be aware of with Bridges from what I'm seeing.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, he strikes me as more of either a catch and shoot or a flow type player. Keep ball movement, get the ball in space, get him free. So he will have to adapt to the NBA game. There is so much more pick and roll and one-on-one actions that he'll have to adjust to. But I think in the Warriors system with all the spacing, he could fit in pretty well, which is why I think, going back to the boxes all being checked for him, I think this is a really good fit for the Warriors. Plus, based on some of the accounts that, I've heard or seen is he had a nice day with the Warriors when he visited. So very curious to see if they actually take him. So much of this too, as you mentioned, it comes down to what happens before. One of the interesting guys that I'll just mention early is the only one that I think's a for sure first round pick that they worked out was Jared McCain. Jared McCain, I saw Duke play a couple of different times in person this year. He's certainly probably a top 15 lottery level pick. But I think he will go down as the best shooter in this draft. The way I saw him on two of his best days, but he could not miss when I saw him at Florida State. That was the game when he had 35 points at halftime. He made 7 or 8 threes in a row. And he's just such a pure shooter, and he could score from anywhere. So I'm very curious as well. And I wanted to mention his name. If the Warriors try to swap a deal, as the Warriors are rumored into various levels of trading, keep your eye on McCain as well in a possible trade.
Yeah, well, we're throwing other names out there. Just kind of curious. You said you've had your ear to the ground in terms of what the Warriors are looking for. Also, just some other possibilities of who might be available. Again, this still is guesswork when you're talking about the 50s, unless, you are talking about some type of trade. But who are some other players that we haven't mentioned or maybe aren't specifically listed as going to the Warriors in some of these mock drafts that could be available that you think could be sleepers, could be great picks, or should be someone that this fan base should keep an eye on going into Thursday night?
Yeah, I think for Thursday night's pick, I've narrowed it down at least to some of the guys they've worked out. I love Oso from Marquette. The big man can really pass and move, and he's just such a intelligent human being and just a joy to be around in general. Rooting for him no matter where he lands, but I do think he would potentially fit in pretty well. And if you're looking at that position, Keyshawn Johnson from both San Diego State and finished his career at Arizona, it fits that mold pretty well as well. I think they came in both for workouts. So those are two I've got high radar for. I think more of a sleeper would be a guy like Isaac Jones, who played a long career and finished up at Stetson. Stetson, of course, went on a run in the Atlantic Sun tournament to get to March Madness last year, primarily behind Jones's hot shooting, but also he can play down low a little bit as well. He's a guy that I think not as many fans are familiar with playing at a smaller school, but I think his game translates pretty well, and he will be likely a late second-round pick. And if the Warriors are high enough on him, they could take him right there at 52. And I think also the one guy we haven't really touched on is Dylan Jones. He also came in for a workout here, and Dylan Jones has just had a phenomenal career. He's on the Weber State Mount Rushmore of all-time players, which of course includes Damian Lillard and Harold the Show Arsenault. And now Dylan Jones is right there with those two legends. Took Weber State pretty far 2 years ago and broke all sorts of records as for his career scoring. And he's got a knack for the clutch, kind of like Damian Lillard did, has continued for several years in the NBA. So I'm really curious to see where Dylan Jones goes. I think he had a little bit of a disappointing year because he didn't have as good of a supporting cast. And Weber State finished a disappointing fourth in the Big Sky as a team and got knocked out of the Big Sky tournament in the first round. But I do think in the pros, it's going to be so much nicer for him to have that kind of spacing. He was double teamed all last year, watched a lot of their games. So maybe he's a little too aspirational for the Warriors. He's projected low 40s, high 30s, but could be a really nice get if he slips into the 50s.
You never know. You just never know what's going to happen. Well, Rocco, really appreciate you taking so much time to chat with us here on Locked On Warriors. Really quickly, before I let you go, don't want to take up too much of your time. Where can people follow your content, find all of what you're writing, videos that you're making as you follow college basketball throughout the year? You're always breaking down schedules, brackets, so a lot of interesting content for basketball fans to keep up with.
Yeah, thanks, Kylan. You can follow me on Twitter at Rocco Miller 8 or X. That's Rocco Miller with the number 8. I'm also a part of the Field of 68 Media Network where, throughout the season, we do bracketology shows Mondays and Fridays. So I'm sure if some of your fans have been following college basketball, they may know me from there. And all sorts of other adventures going on. Throughout the offseason, I consult college basketball teams at all levels on their scheduling, which is such a huge portion of the selection process when we get to March Madness, how teams get selected. A lot of that comes back to who they play and where they play them during the scheduling. So if you're into college basketball, if you're into some of the depths of college basketball, definitely give me a follow, and we're going to keep building this over the years. So thank you.
And you're a Bay Area person. So what other
Correct.
reason do people need to give you a follow as we have Warriors fans who are listening and watching?
Absolutely. Right here in Oakland.
All right. Oakland Zone, Rocco Miller, thanks so much again. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That'll do it for this edition of Locked On Warriors. Great insight there from Rocco Miller. Really appreciate him, an East Bay guy stopping by the show. Now, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the biggest sports stories of the day with the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus our national shows covering every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Once again, appreciate you all being here. Stick with me throughout the week. We're going to have more NBA draft analysis, live reaction coming up on Thursday night. Plus, we'll continue to break down the evolving situations as the Golden State Warriors start to make some offseason moves. Kevon Looney coming back, and now a big void to fill in this coaching staff. Appreciate y'all joining us. Have a great day, night, and appreciate you being here wherever you are listening from. We will see you next time.